timing out, huh?
Recording is on.
Ooh.
Okay, recording is now on.
Well, that's good that just started now. Great. All right.
What a game yesterday, eh? What a game.
Yeah.
Yeah, should we wait for him? Maybe, I guess he's going to reconnect.
I would probably keep going, right?
Yeah.
I won't spend too much time.
We have Mason here as well, if you want to introduce yourself before your kind of minutes. And we have Mikhail as well, which I think is new, and Tom.
Oh, Eric was possibly going to. Tom is here as well. You can. Eric had something else, but I think a lot of people probably know Eric from DAOstack already. But yeah, I had a quick 5-minute presentation. Can I just jump right into that? Does that sound like a good plan? I don't want to take too much time here, but
yeah, sure. Go for it.
Nice. Okie dokie. So I'm gonna share screen. This is gonna be a little bit janky, but jump to the front. So yeah, I'm Mason, friends of John. We had known each other in Boston and randomly saw each other at Ethereum conference. We were just sitting next to each other. I was like, "Whoa, John, what's up?" So
DevCon 3, right? Yeah.
DevCon 3. Yep. Yeah. So yeah, and then have been friends with Level K and whatnot. Yeah, so just to go into some history of how I got to where I am now. I quit my job to go full-time into crypto in 2017. Built Xtherium, which is an implementation of Ethereum in Elixir with Jeff, the Compound CTO, and others. Contracted with Compound for a little bit, was fed up with Ethereum's UX and developer experience, the high fees, slow transactions and whatnot, and was thinking of turning Mana into a Ethereum 2 client, but sort of saw the flaws in ETH2. I just thought that they were building way too much. Had too big of a plan that wasn't going to be able to be released on time, which is sort of coming true. So at that point, I was like, well, I guess I'm going to build my own chain. And that's how Ellipticoin got started in 2017. Worked on that for 3 or so years and got to the point where I sort of needed to do a token sale. Wasn't really interested in doing a token sale. Then I, would give up too much and didn't have enough built. I wanted to have working software before I tried to profit off of something. So joined Optimism in early 2020. And then as IDOs became more, people started doing these initial DEX offerings, I became interested in that. It was like, oh, this is a nice way that I can start to raise money off this thing incrementally. So left in March 2020 to go full-time Ellipticoin. And then this summer, I pivoted from a smart contract platform to a DeFi chain. And we'll get into how we got there. The team right now is me, which I just went over my quick history. And Tom, you can say hi if you like. Are you? So you never know. Like, oh, are they? Oh, there you are.
What's going on, everybody? Hey.
You can do a quick intro, or if you want.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So Mason and I met a couple of years ago. My background in crypto. Before knowing Mason is really just as a hobbyist, interested in Bitcoin and Ethereum since 2016, and yeah, in the last 2 years of knowing Mason, have slowly nudged him towards going all in on Ellipticoin and have been along for the ride since February.
Yeah, so thank you to Tom for pushing. Like, I was just complaining about, like, oh, we're not going to ship. He's like, just fucking do the thing. We'll figure it out. So it was good to get that push. So going back to screen share. So I was going to do a quick demo of what we have now. So we have an automated market maker built, and people are earning liquidity rewards. We have $50,000 worth of Bitcoin and ETH in there. And I was thinking showing a trade execution. Should we buy some falling ETH or some falling Bitcoin? Anybody have a suggestion? of which is going to fall quicker or slower? Waiting. Okay, I'm going to buy Bitcoin.
Ethereum.
Yeah, Ethereum. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Boom. Okay, so we have ETH now. So yeah, this the idea that blockchains can't have instant transactions, I think, is just we're eventually going to get to this point where blockchains are going to have UX like Web 2 UX, and yeah, it's basically like a race to get there. I see you're all we're talking about scaling solutions later, and these L2s are going to make the Web 2 experience, but this sort of gets into oh crap, was I not sharing screen there?
We saw the trade, but then we stopped. Yeah.
Oh, nice. You saw the trade. That's the important part.
Yeah.
Good. That would have been like weird to but so this gets into this idea of Ellipticoin being an app chain. So originally Ellipticoin was a smart contract platform, and I started realizing that I could make some of the functionality be built into the protocol. So I had a token contract, and I was like, oh, this token contract can just run natively, and then everything else can be the part of the protocol. And then I realized the whole thing could basically just be built into the base of the chain. So the idea of Ellipticoin is it has all the functionality. It has the AMM. It could potentially have lending. It could potentially have synthetic assets, all built directly into the protocol. The thinking behind that being unification instead of fragmentation and aggregation. So what we have now on ETH, we see like Compound and Aave and all these things building a bunch of lending protocols, and then aggregators aggregating them all back together. And that's happening with the the DEXs as well, with 1inch and whatnot. And I think if you have one entity making all the money Lego, like I do think that interoperability is important. So you can have money Legos. You can say send your liquidity, use your liquidity as collateral or whatever you want to do. But I think there's benefits in one entity creating all the Legos, because then all the Legos can fit together well. We are already seeing this in all of the different implementations of ERC20s, and there's I forget which 7 something. There's a few implementations of token standards, but if you just have one, there are a lot of benefits to that. And then another benefit is a single rent seeker instead of multiple. So in a future where we have Optimism and Uniswap and Ethereum, you're going to have to, if not indirectly, pay fees at each of those layers. Like those entities will need to profit somehow. Whereas with Ellipticoin, there's just one rent seeker. And I think another thing that makes this more interesting is I think that the topmost platform is going to have the highest valuation. So I think, in the Polkadot example, the Polkadot token is going to be worth more than any of the parachains. In the Ethereum example, ETH is going to be worth more than anything on any of these, any of these L2s and whatnot. And this gets into the plan of how we make this thing. We're planning to make this thing work. Is I think that this really what's going on right now is a battle. It's not a battle for the best tech. It's a battle for the most liquidity. And I think the liquidity is on ETH1 right now, and it's sort of like we're racing for all these L2s or other L1s. And the way that we're going to get that liquidity is by using our issuance to pull that liquidity in. So 98% of our issuance is going to go towards pulling in liquidity. It's going to be the first L1 that I know of that's doing basically yield farming for all of the token, almost all of the tokens. And our current incentivized pools are Bitcoin, ETH, and Ellipticoin. We can add others. And just for comparison, ETH, 60% of ETH in circulation is from the presale. And yeah, so that's already money that they've basically spent. And we've spent about 10% of our issuance so far on this prototype. People have been putting their liquidity in here and getting rewards just to test this thing out. And the way that things work is it's basically a copy of the Bitcoin issuance, except I tweaked the variables a little bit. There's happenings happen about every year. There's 6 happenings, so yeah, over the period of 6 years, we're issuing all these tokens. The way that it works is basically proof of work, but swap out tokens instead of energy and mining rigs. There's a 21 million fixed supply cap. I think that meme is valuable, even if it is, imaginary or not, that we can get into that whole philosophical argument. And then you require a large amount of ellipticoin to lock up if you want to mine. And the plan is that institutions will run miners instead of hobbyists. And one of the final things is the incentives are fairly draconian. So if you miss a block or you somehow misbehave, your entire stake gets burned. So we're thinking, this is treating running these miners as if they go down, all the money goes away. And I think the thinking there is the incentive of all the transaction fees that these miners will be getting will make it worth it for miners to take that risk. Finally, next steps, considering building an arbitrage bot for interim funding, just so I can stop eating through my savings. It's been fun for a while, but I'm starting to get, I am not that crypto rich yet, so I need food. And moving over to network specific private keys. Ethereum, so you will sign messages with your Ethereum private key, your Polkadot private key, and whatnot. We had our own private key mechanism when we were thinking of building more like a smart contract platform, but I think it makes more sense to just use Ethereum private keys. Then we get everything, all of the key management stuff built from scratch, built for us. And yeah, I mean, that is a ton. But we have to start somewhere. So and then also the reason why I'm on this call is, so we have been issuing these tokens, and our plan is to get together some of the liquidity providers that have been providing liquidity and earning ellipticoins and do an initial DEX offering through Mesa, potentially, and selling those tokens to the general public. They are available, but sort of getting the splash of press and whatnot from an initial DEX offering, or we are also looking at the potential of going the traditional create a company route, raise a SAFT, raise around, and make this more of a traditional thing. I'm definitely more interested in a more decentralized thing. That's why I'm so interested in talking to y'all, because it just seems like a lot more in the ethos of crypto to sell tokens, in a DEX offering, as opposed to, raise traditional funding and, set up a company in the US, all of that stuff. So it's a lot there. And then also, so this funding is definitely a possibility, but also as you're talking about L2s, one of the possible options is this could be an L2 solution where ellipticoin becomes the functionality of ellipticoin. One of the ways that I understand DXDAO is you're building tools for each of these different chains, and there is the possibility that ellipticoin could be just the app chain of DXDAO that does all of these DXDAO type things, lending and trading and whatnot. But that's definitely like a more theoretical, and we'd have to figure out a lot more stuff there and discuss much more. But the funding definitely seems like it makes a ton of sense to sell these tokens on Mesa. And if that goes well, then we are very, very open to figuring out the best way that we can align ourselves to, merge this and make this the best outcome for either of us, or, whether it's DXDAO holds some ellipticoins, or, there are infinite possibilities there. So, definitely happy to be on the call and meet everybody. And excited to hear questions. I'm sure there's a ton. It's a lot of stuff, but.
What's the timing you're thinking of this? Because I guess for Mesa, I'm not sure. We are kind of going through the process of trying to shift to like a V2 right now. and that'll come with like I think that'll itself make a little bit of a splash and try to be a great platform for precisely sales like this. And I don't know the exact timeline on that. Martin maybe can speak to that, but what are you guys thinking?
Yeah, I mean, everything is up in the air on Ellipticoin as well as far as timing, because there's a lot of things to time. When do we, move over to the Ethereum keys? When do we, do this DEX offering? Everything is pretty much as soon as possible, because so much of this is, like weeks matter, right? Like especially as these layer 2s are going online. So yeah, as soon as possible, but possibly in the next 2 months, I'm thinking to sell tokens. Like we want to get this moving, and all the software is ready to go. I have a multi-sig bridge that just needs to be deployed and move over. So yeah, next 2 to 3 months, I think is the general idea.
How does the team look like today?
So it's just me and Tom currently. Will from Optimism also had joined for a month or so, or no, a couple months. But he has also, the not getting payment. That time ran out. So he has gone to look for another job. It is still possible that we could hire him if we get the funding and everything makes sense. We're still figuring that out. I sent him a message this morning. He definitely will hop, he can hop on these calls and, chat with you all if that makes sense. I did want to mention to him, like, possibility of him joining DXbiz, all of that stuff. There's possibilities, but current team with me and Thomas. Will was with us for a month, but needs funding to continue, which is one of the reasons that we're looking to raise money.
So is that the main reason to raise money? If we're like short term, at least. Short
term is basically reducing my own risk, right? Like if I've worked on this for 3 or so years before this, and half a year at this point, and what I don't want to do is work another 2 years on this and then not have any reward. Like I want to start protecting myself a little bit. And yeah, getting some sort of a salary would make me more comfortable. And it just, funding is to make this more, basically I've been working on an experiment, right? And the experiment worked. And now it's like, okay, how do we turn this into a business? And I think there is definitely a possibility of turning it into a business. And yeah, if you do have funding, then you can bring on other developers. And then it potentially drives the price of the token up, because people see like, oh, there is funding and they're working on this, and there's extra developers and there's people who are invested in this. Whereas if it's just running on its own, the token price might, not have the rocket fuel that we're looking for. So
you've got the tech, you need to build some hype, right?
That's
so
exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mason, I have a question for you. Like over the next, let's say 2, 3, 4 months, is the important thing to have the funding you need in order to hire the people and build everything you want to build? Or is it to get the token out there in the hands of the community like as soon as possible? Or would you be better positioned to do the token after 4 months of everything you want to build with having the funding?
Very good questions. And I think the amount of work I need to get done to the point where I'm comfortable releasing is not, I think it's a month or so to get to, basically I just need to convert private keys from Ellipticoin private keys to Ethereum private keys, which is, fairly insignificant. I think the most important part is getting the tokens out over hiring people. Like I think hiring people can almost come second, and then you almost get to see more validation and see what's actually being built, as opposed to, just hiring people and sort of being like, okay, well now we have people, what do we do? I definitely like the iterative approach. We've just always been like not doing things until we absolutely need to, and like building the software, getting people actually using it. And then hiring people once there's the backlogs filled, and it's like, oh, we know exactly what that person's going to do. They can clean up the backlog, as opposed to hiring ahead of time, then just build a bunch of software and hope that it works. So I think priority is getting the tokens out there. And I also think, like I say, because time is so important here, as opposed, as these L2s are coming online, and if we do, hire people and say, we're going to raise the money in 4 months, then I just see software becoming 6 months, and that just turning into Dfinity or other projects like that, where it's like, well, eventually we're going to have the thing working. We have the working software. Like, we just saw the Bitcoin trade, and it's like, we have software that people can use today. It's not as decentralized as we like, but the idea is decentralized over time, progressive decentralization. This is the actual tool that the actual user experience that people are going to have, and it's functional and it works. And then once that thing takes off, use that money to build out and decentralize and to make things more, turn it from an experiment into a business.
Cool.
Yeah, Mason, this sounds super cool. I suggest you stick around and in the chat, in the DAO talk, and maybe we can figure out how to collaborate. One of the things is obviously to do the audio on Mesa, and yeah, we're it's one of the topics in the rest of the call. I don't know, we're trying to get to it for the past couple of weeks, but how will DXDAO collaborate or incubate or partner with these kind of projects? How do we support these promising projects, I guess? So yeah, that's something we're working on.
Yeah, no, and I think we're all sort of figuring it out as we go, right? People have not even structured themselves in the way that DXDAO is structured in humanity. So it's there will be bumps, and I'm definitely willing to. We have a lot of the pieces here, DXDAO and Ellipticoin, what we've been working on, and figuring out the ways that we can put those pieces together to, maximize value. I think there's a ton of opportunities, and I am super excited to, provide feedback on L2 discussions and all that stuff. There is, lots of possibilities, and it's just a matter of figuring out what the best possibilities are for everyone. So, yeah, excited.
Yeah, I had a quick technical question. I don't think I heard that, but is Ellipticoin EVM compatible? Would we be able to run whole DAO, a DXDAO base on Ellipticoin?
So it isn't. Originally it was a smart contract platform, and I was thinking of doing EVM compatibility. But the way that it would work, one theoretical possibility would be write whatever the functionality is of these applications in. So the Ellipticoin is written in Rust, and all of the functionality is built directly into the chain. So you could theoretically, say Swapper, for example, you build the Swapper functionality in Rust, and then you have Swapper on, this chain. You potentially have Swapper on Polkadot, and then you also have basically native Swapper. So it does require work there. You can't just send out the EVM code base and push it up there, which is, that is a possibility to add back smart contract support and add back EVM compatibility. But yeah, like I say, a lot of it with this iterative stuff, I would much rather build software that people are using than build technical things that take a long time to build, and then eventually you get it to market, and then people don't have, if the liquidity isn't there. I think one of the things I mentioned on the slide is I think the race we're seeing right now is a race to liquidity, not a race to the best software. I just seeing seeing Bitcoin, the software that runs Bitcoin and the Bitcoin market cap, it's the quality of software doesn't have very much relation to the money locked in the thing. So it is a possibility, but I think there are quicker ways for Ellipticoin and DXDAO to collaborate there. But yeah, at this point, open to all possibilities and want to hear as much as possible, and then we can sort of cut ideas down and figure out like, okay, well, we're not going to do this. We're not going to do this. And I am super interested to stick around to hear this L2 discussion because that'll have a lot to do with it. You know, like I hopped on the call on Friday and I heard some discussion of does DXDAO just focus just on Arbitrum? Do they focus just on optimism? And I imagine it'll be like, do you just focus on your own chain? Do you focus on multiple chains? And the decisions you make there will probably, you know, affect the decision of how Ellipticoin ties into that, right? Is this just like a side thing that, you know, we're both aligned, or is it more like core to the thing? Or yeah, there's like I keep saying, tons of possibilities. Swiss Army knife.
Yeah, sounds good. And I mean, good luck, and let's stay in touch, and you know, stay in the chat, I guess.
Yes.
Anyone has any other questions? Yeah.
Well, I think the Mesa idea of something is we should be thinking about how we can. That's like to me the big takeaway thing that we could try to like work on that, because I think that makes a lot of sense. And then we need to think about whether with kind of on our timeline of when launching V2, because it could be an opportunity for this to be like a flagship token launch on Mesa V2. So I think we should be thinking about that while also thinking of the medium and long-term capabilities.
Perfect. I definitely agree.
Yeah. Yeah. So we can stay in touch in the chat, in the forums. Anyone has any other questions, or we can continue to the next topic? All right. Venki, do you want to take the stage?
Yeah, I could do that. Let me just share my screen. OKRs. Yeah, so last week we started with this, but then I kind of feel that we weren't structured. And then so me and Elon thought we would jot down a little bit more detail, giving a little bit background about what OKRs are, and then see how we would adopt it for DXDAO. So OKRs are basically objectives and key results. And it has been in the business for like 15, 20 years now. And it's a goal management framework. So, I mean, companies use this for implementing and executing their strategies. The reason why OKRs are different from other goal management structures like these balanced scorecards and all are because it focuses on the results rather than focusing on what we are actually building. So the features being shipped. So it doesn't focus on those, but it focuses on whether the effort that we are putting in is actually delivering us results. So that's one of the things that OKRs are good at. And then it also helps in increasing transparency and employee engagement. Because when you run a company, when you run teams, it's the goals are set at a personal level, and then you're generally not sharing these goals with other employees. And these OKRs are not linked to any sort of salaries and compensations. So these are company-wide goals that we discuss on all hands, on every all hands meeting that we have. So it kind of gives us increased transparency on how we are doing running our business. And we also see to it that it is being set. The company objectives might change quarter to quarter. And so it is being constantly set, tracked, and reevaluated every quarter. So just to recap here, so objectives generally tells you the direction in which the company should go. Key results are basically measuring the progress that we are going towards the objective. And initiatives are what we are doing to achieve the key results. Okay, so yeah, we spoke a little bit about the benefits. It's because it aligns towards the entire company. It brings a lot of transparency, and also it brings focus. It also helps us measure against outcomes rather than outputs. So basically, when we are working towards a roadmap, for instance, we know that, we are launching Swapper, we are launching towards Mesa version 2. So those are the outputs for which the efforts are going in. And then we try to measure what should be the outcome. So we already plan towards what should be the outcome. Okay, with Mesa 2, we will be launching 3 token offerings in the first quarter, something like that, or 20 offerings in the year. So those are the ones that we will be measuring and validating our goals against. Yeah. So some of the don'ts. So you should never link compensation rewards with OKRs, except for sales teams. Yeah. So sales teams get their goals like that. But then if you're in a product, if you're branding, support, marketing, you should never link compensation towards OKRs, mainly because OKRs are primarily helped in keeping the stretch goals. So if you think that in Swapper, if we can achieve 1 billion in terms of volume, trade volume, then we should probably stretch it a little bit and then say that, okay, let's try to have a key result of 1.5 billion, things like that. So that you're stretching it a little bit. And then when you link compensation towards it, then you're trying to limit goals. So to make sure that you're always trying to make it 100%. Yeah. So we should never link compensations. We should never consider OKRs as features to be shipped or roadmaps, and should also not try setting impossible goals or unachievable, like 100% market share in the DEX. So we shouldn't try doing that also, because then it demotivates. When we are reading this week on week, then it kind of demotivates that, yeah, this is not going to happen at all. So this is a small summary of OKRs. Any questions until now? No? Cool. So I will just move on. Implementation. So when a company decides that, yeah, let's try to implement OKRs, it basically starts from their vision and mission statement, why the company exists. And then once from there, we take strategic goals. So for a company, they will say that, okay, for this year, we are going to target more revenue, more growth in terms of user and in terms of partnership. So if a company has such kind of goals, from that, a company sets one objective. Yeah. Not more than one objective, and they set an OKR, or they should have one primary objective and then maybe a secondary objective. So this is the objective that the company would work towards the year. So they set this, and then that in turn is cascaded to the different squads and different teams. So if we, let me just go to an example that I have given for DXDAO. So Elon mentioned that this would be one good company objective. So if the OKR is about to increase the usage of decentralized products that is built by, within, and in collaboration with DXDAO, if this is the company objective, and then it cascades into different teams like Omen, Swapper, Mesa, Rails, and all of the companies all of the products that we are building. And the objective for Omen would, since it is already launched, it would be, okay, substantially increase Omen's usage. So this would be an objective that is set by them. And then Swapper says that, yeah, I will successfully launch Swapper. And these are the key results with which we measure how this objective is met. Yeah, so increasing the number of unique addresses that is using Omen by 300%, 20 markets with volume greater than 100K, increasing unique. I mean, these are numbers that I've just picked it out of thin air. So these could be the different key results for this objective set for Omen. And so basically company OKRs are set first, and then squads and products create their own OKRs derived from the company OKR. And squads also would plan on how to reach the OKR. I mean, what are all the different tasks that they would do to reach the OKRs. And we do a weekly check-in to see how are we doing in terms of OKR. So let's say, for instance, we take this omens usage, so substantially increasing omens usage, and then across every key result, measure what the target should be, and then you constantly put in a value of how we are performing. And that is it.
Yeah, is there any questions? I think, if you can stay on this slide, Venki, I think this is great. Like to increase the usage of decentralized products built within and in collaboration with DXDAO. I think this is a great, let's say, objective. Like a goal for DXDAO. And then here we have Swapper and Omen, but this can also be done for the marketing, right? The marketing can also create OKRs based on this kind of goal, and the biz dev can also create an OKR based on this goal, and it kind of aligns everyone, to decide what the tasks they're doing and what they're putting their initiative on based on this DXDAO goal. And this goal is an example, but yeah, I think we can start with something like this. So any thoughts, comments, feedback?
I think it's a great idea to, like you said, just to align things. And I guess, like, what would next steps be, like, to probably come up with some consensus around what the OKRs would be? Yeah.
So I would think we can maybe figure out, I don't know, Venki, maybe one more kind of like goal for the DXDAO, and then ratify maybe just the DXDAO goal within a proposal, and then Omen will create its own OKRs, and maybe Swapper will create its own OKRs once they are made into like squads.
Yeah. I think we should have a consensus on what the DXDAO's objective is for as a strategic objective, and then from there, every product will have its own OKRs, and inside each product as well. I mean, if Swapper is launching, I mean, the support team, if there is, then they would have a separate OKRs, and the engineering team will have separate, marketing will have separate. So that's why it is important that we have only one objective from the company. So when it nests down, it would branch out into like 18 to 20 different OKRs, basically. So if we have multiple, we did this mistake when we were doing it in the startup. I mean, we had 4 OKRs from the company, and we should have more growth, we should have more revenue, should have less retention, and then it kind of it became a big matrix.
Yeah, I guess when I think about this flowing down, I mean, I think revenue and I'd say decentralization, but I guess you could say like reputation increase, right? Rep balance increase to more addresses. And I think those are like the two things that I am trying to abide by, is like, how do we increase revenue and how do we get rep in the hands of more ETH addresses?
So I think in this case, another goal for the DXDAO can be to improve its governance and to decentralize itself. And then under that, you could, I mean, I haven't like very clearly defined that, but under something like that, it's kind of grandiose. We want to decentralize and we want to build our governance system. You can have, rep inflation, and you can have, fractalization. You can have all these kind of governance related things.
Yeah, I think revenue is kind of like the guiding light, or like, as I'm saying, I think there's two things: there's revenue and like increase rep to more ETH addresses. Those to me are like the most important things that DXDAO should be doing.
Okay, I mean, I think last week we discussed what's important, like in the immediate term? Is it like Omen usage, like many people are using it, or Omen, creating revenue or creating, any sort of profit? So, yeah, like personally, I think it's okay for DXDAO to focus on growth and not revenue generation. But this is, I guess, open for debate.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like growth is only good if it generates revenue eventually, right? So I guess like that's what I think, like I'm trying to think of like what's the most like top level thing here. And to me, it seems like that if we get revenue, like I'm not saying that means we need to devote everything to revenue, but if that's the guiding light, then like I think that we could focus on growth now because we know it will drive revenue later. But I just think in terms of like the mandates that we have to like DXD holders, that revenue is kind of the guiding light.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess revenue, like, are we considering, like, how are we calculating revenue? Like, is Omen markets and liquidity in Omen markets, is that revenue? No? I mean, I don't know. Is like the volume of transactions?
I guess what's sent like the way that it's structured now, like the way that we are, like I'm defining revenue as like funds sent to the curve. And like we haven't really sent any funds to the curve, so I'm just trying to think of, but that's like kind of the way that, and how do we get there?
So I mean, this is an interesting question because I worked at a company that was doing growth, right? And we were kind of like a middleman for something, and we didn't take any profit, right? Like we had people paying us, and we were paying, like we had advertisers paying us, and we were paying publishers, and we didn't take any profit. And that was kind of like to increase the revenue. So now the question is here, like, let's say Omen, we want Omen to grow, we want Omen to be very successful. Should we like aim to have as many markets with the highest liquidity and with the most volume, and then at some point in the future decide that, okay, we're going to take 0.5% fee, and that's going to start generating profit.
I guess like that seems like the second step for Omen to decide, and not necessarily like what DXDAO is kind of first deciding, right? I just think like that we're kind of thinking about what do we start with for DXDAO, and then like the Omen and the squads are figuring out how to implement those. And I think in a lot of cases growth makes sense, but like growth for the sake of like sending revenue to the curve, and I think that's just kind of the guiding principle we have now.
I mean, we could have a multi-year strategic objective as revenue being the driver. And then we could have, let's say, for this year, we see that, we need to have a bigger user growth in terms where it would lead us to the revenue that we are actually looking forward to. The startup that I was working for, we had about 10K installs a day, and then we were making zero money. And we said that, okay, in 3 years, we wanted to start to monetize from the apps that we are building. And the first 2 years, we spent primarily on growth. I mean, we could work like that as well.
Yeah, Chris, to your increase the number of people that have rep would be like one of the statistics of the bigger than that is allow DXDAO to continue, allow DXDAO to become an unstoppable decentralized entity that can't be shut down, basically. And one of the things to do that is our tools have to be able to handle that. Our rep holders have to be able to handle that, and probably a few others. And so one of those things is have more active rep holders and increase the rep user base, I guess, right? Holder base. But the goal of the increasing rep holders is to make it an unstoppable entity, I think, right?
Unstoppable, more decentralized, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
well, the reason you want it to be decentralized is so that it's unstoppable, right?
Well, I would say I think the reason you want it to be decentralized is I think like it's a public good. Financial infrastructure is a public good, and I don't want that to be owned by centralized entities. Just because I think you get rent seeking. Like no one owns like the oceans, right? Things like that.
Yeah. So I guess the next steps would be, like, ideally we'd start jamming on this document. Venki, if you can share it, and create. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Venki, but we should create like maybe 2 more like general DXDAO objectives, which we kind of discussed here.
Yeah.
And then I think this is something we could start. I don't know, maybe hopefully before the end of the month we can like ratify these. And yeah, like these will be kind of like the DXDAO general objectives, and then the next step would be, I think Omen is like the first kind of guild that is happening. So the Omen Guild creating its own OKRs. Geronimo. And yeah, I don't know, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think it's great, and I'm looking forward to including the first OKR into the Omen roadmap.
Yeah, I know the latest draft you had shared is the Miro. I think for a lot of people, Miro who are not familiar with Miro, it's a little difficult to like edit and put in like OKR sentences and the spacing and everything. Is there an easier way to like gather these ideas from the community than like the Miro board? I don't know if there is.
I'm trying to work on a template in Notion. I don't know if that is easier or not, but
that might be.
Yeah, let me see if this works out. I mean, this is basically like creating objectives here and key results. Make it a little bit bigger. And yeah, you can basically set objectives, and then you can look at those pages back here.
Cool.
Awesome. So should we move on to the next topic? Does anyone have any more comments? Yes. Okay, great. Venki, you can maybe share it with in the general BizDev chat and the OKR chat.
Absolutely, yeah. Cool, thank you.
Yeah, so the next kind of topic is the scaling discussion. Mainly Arbitrum. I think they are the most progressed. And I think there's a call later this week. I don't know, John, maybe you want to lead that, John, or?
Yeah, so there was a good amount of discussion about Arbitrum and the product strategy call last Friday. We also had a smaller call with the Arbitrum team, including one of their co-founders and a couple of other full-time members. And so where they're at is they're like about to make a big like testnet announcement, and then they're aiming to have their system deployed and usable for mainnet on like March 1st, I believe. The very first version, I think, will have like a multi-sig kind of upgradability, so it's like a fail-safe, so it won't be like the fully trustless version until they kind of pull the plug on their multi-sig. But yeah, the plan seems to be March 1st. So then that kind of sparked this discussion here of like what's our strategy in terms of that. Like DXDAO, obviously we've deployed to XDAI, and so we've kind of been building up this knowledge and experience of deploying DXDAO stuff to another chain, kind of like setting up camp, if you will, in another chain or layer, if it's in the case that would be an L2. And when it's EVM compatible, that obviously removes a lot of the dev work that would be involved in rewriting the contracts, right? So Arbitrum is like XDAI EVM compatible. And so, yeah, so the question I guess we were trying to address on Friday is like, what's our strategy here? And I think that the general consensus was that we should push ahead with Arbitrum. Like, it's not by any means this like all in thing. Like, we always have the ability to switch, and like I said, it's EVM compatible, so it's not like an immense amount of work. but I think the consensus was to be fairly aggressive and like kind of push this partnership with Arbitrum and try to get potentially like Swapper, Omen, and like maybe a clone of the governance, like the DAO itself, onto Arbitrum in these early days here.
Yeah, just to add on that a little bit. Yeah, so I think we are starting to try to formulate some generalized L2 scalability strategy, and I'm working on something to post in the forum on that. And I think that strategy, you know, from a macro perspective, I think Zet just posted there's like 700 Quay gas prices right now. Like L2 scalability is happening in 2021. It's going to be you know, driving product usage across you know, DeFi. So I think we want to be playing in that and have a very aggressive strategy. And I think the strategy now is kind of all of the above and figuring out where we can play and where we can kind of distinguish ourselves a little bit. And you know, even hearing Mason's presentation, I think that there's going to be a lot of competition for kind of the back end. Where does the liquidity go? Where does that all sit? But I think a key DXDAO advantage is that we own the front ends, and the front ends are relationships with the end user, and we can use that to kind of own that relationship and, you know, be able to plug into whatever exists behind it. But that means we need to stay nimble on that. So I think the strategy for the products is, how can we make scalability and L2 like an easy to use function of each of the products? Like maybe Swapper distinguishes itself as the only DEX that truly does offer like several different L2 solutions, right? So you could go to Swapper and you could trade on Ethereum mainnet, you could trade on XDAI, you could trade on Arbitrum, you could trade on Optimism, and maybe you could even trade on Ellipticoin, right? But you're coming to the front end to be able to do that. Now, it's a lot of challenges in terms of development, UI, and a whole bunch of things, but I think that makes a lot of sense. And given the seemingly inevitable rise of gas prices, we need to move quickly. And so anything that we can do now to move us into that direction, I think we should be moving quickly and aggressively, because this is such a almost existential threat. So that's why we're moving quickly on XDAI. And that's why I think we need to move quickly with Arbitrum right now, because they're in the position now where they're going to have some functionality that we can use. Now that means in 2 or 3 months, if Optimism's there, then we should move quickly on that. And we'll be better able to move quickly on Optimism because we've done it on XDAI and because we've done it on Arbitrum there. So yeah, I think specific to the Arbitrum is more of this would kind of be billed as a partnership of sorts, right? Because we would be participating in their testnet, and I think they're going to try to do some press around that. So I think we had posted about this. As John said, we talked about it on the product strategy call on Friday, and then I had posted a thread about this on Friday. So I imagine that we will do some marketing press around DXDAO launching Swapper or the DAO itself on Arbitrum. So just wanted to kind of double check with people here in terms of that like marketing partnership angle on whether there's anything we should be thinking of or driving this forward over the next couple of weeks. So we'll probably, I think, have a call. I think it's Wednesday, 10 a.m. Was where we were floating. 10 a.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. 1500 UTC time on Wednesday is kind of the one right now. And then I imagine out of that, we will have we'll try to make some announcement from DXDAO. They'll presumably make some announcement there. And that announcement will probably say that we're launching Swapper, DXDAO, and maybe Omen on Arbitrum. But definitely, I think Swapper and DXDAO, at least from on the testnet, excuse me. And I think that's a good position for us to be strategically, like long-term with having Arbitrum as a possibility for a product. And I think it's also good, like short-term marketing buzz to be able to like have an L2 play and be involved in that and show that we're moving into that direction. So I don't think there really is any downside to doing this. There is a little bit of we're just announcing partnerships, but I think this is a good opportunity for us, and it's a real thing that we can hopefully hopefully have some cool products out of this.
Yeah, and well, it would be like an announcement at first. We do have now like a proven track record of deploying stuff to XDAI, and with the latest Omen release, like Omen itself will also be on XDAI. So I think we kind of can demonstrate that real momentum towards this, and then this could be like us kind of putting a stake in the sand, saying like we are also like working towards an L2 deployment, right? That ties security to Ethereum and not just the sidechain.
And I don't know if any dApp has plugged into two like scalability solutions. Just trying to think. There's some dApps that run on the L2s, but it's probably just one L2. So having a dApp that has a couple different ones, that could be interesting.
Yeah, I think a lot of dApps, if they're using another chain scalability solution, whether it's another sidechain or L2, like in my experience at least, it's almost like they're obscuring that and like using that like just to make the user experience easier, right? Whereas for DXDAO, maybe like the focus could actually be about like giving the user control over like which chain they are on, right?
That's cool. So are we like mostly bullish on Arbitrum?
Bullish on scalability solutions. Have you seen gas? Like whatever you can throw at it.
Yeah, I mean it was like $14 to do a basic transaction. Yeah, like now it's like even using DAO Stack is becoming like a significant percentage of your paycheck just to do the proposal. So I think the imperative is there, right? And I think if we look, I actually was just reading over yesterday over Delphi Digital did a layer 2 report, and it's actually pretty good. I think it might be behind their paywall, but maybe we could figure out if there's a way to get people access to that, because given that they're like a DXDAO investor and part of the community, but they do a pretty good job of breaking it down in terms of like what the different types of scalability solutions are. And so if you look at this category of optimistic rollups, right, what's appealing about them is the ability to essentially take dApps from smart contracts from Ethereum and simply just like deploy them as almost like with the same type of developer experience on their chain, and their ability to support the full like range of EVM capabilities. And that's in contrast to like the ZK rollups, which have more limited capabilities, or the Plasma type implementations. And then so that's kind of like when you see how DeFi works and all the interoperability, that optimistic roll-up approach does like become appealing, right? Like at least in theory. And the two main projects that I think Fuel is maybe a third one, but like Optimism and Arbitrum are the ones that I'm like familiar with. And from what I can see, I think Optimism has been louder, right? Like they've been out there and making big announcements. They've gotten more attention. They're kind of the cool kids. They know Vitalik and all that stuff, like a paradigm. But I think when you actually look at what has happened and where the teams are, it seems that Off-Chain Labs with Arbitrum is actually further ahead. So I would say I am more bullish that Arbitrum is going to ship and have something like workable on mainnet both probably well before Optimism.
I feel like I should hop in here.
Yeah, Mason, know something. Worked at Optimism.
No, I mean, I think you're right, but the only thing that I'd add to that, I might have mentioned it Friday, is the community and the capital behind Optimism, I think, are huge to think about. Like, I think when they do get whatever they get going, at some point they'll get something, and it'll when you have Vitalik and all of their investors behind all of that, like the slide I mentioned, like liquidity matters more than tech, but you have to ship something, right? It's like, and that's sort of, I mean, that's the reason, one of the reasons of starting Ellipticoin is like, that's why I want to like see real working software. And but yeah, they're going to get there, right? Like with all of that, clout and the connections to Vitalik and all that, you can raise money and you can hire people, and they will eventually get there. And yeah, I think for DXDAO, it's a matter of like you say, you don't have to go all in on, you can build on Arbitrum and be like, hey, we have this thing working on Arbitrum, and it's not, as long as you're not cutting yourself off from eventually like, oh, optimism is the winner, then you move over to optimism. It's fine, and nobody's going to worry about that. But
yeah, I think you're totally right. And so what I'm anticipating is there's going to be this like window of like Arbitrum launches and then optimism is going to follow. Right. And like, I think you're totally right. Like they're going to they're lining up these partnerships with some of the main DeFi players. They've got Paradigm, they've got, buds with Vitalik, that's going to like come to bear. And so then I think the question is like in that window, do things shift in Arbitrum's favor because it's live? And like, I could see, 700, like literally, $15 to do a transaction, just simply send something on ETH. That might be the right conditions to like kind of shift things in Arbitrum's favor. But in any case, I don't think it's like that expensive for DXDAO to make that. It's almost like a low cost call option on Arbitrum winning, right? Like, and if they don't, and like optimism does come in and like just like bowls them over,